Hey guys, it's Doa. You may think to yourself, hey, Doa's too nice to be on Thorin's channel. Why is he there? And you're right. He's locked me in his closet, and I'm being forced to record this. Help?
Right, I'll ask about that team, but we'll rewind to the year before, the first year of Origin, which is obviously the one where it's a different lineup. But there's Alphari and Nukeduck. This is the one where Cold, formerly Trashy, was the jungler, and then the bot lane was Patrik and Mithy. And if people remember, as you said, a lot of people forget this, that was the split where FNATIC didn't make the finals because you guys beat them. And even though they were coming off the Worlds and they had Nemesis and all that jazz, and you guys were the ones in the final, it's just unfortunately, obviously, then G2 did like the fastest final ever or whatever. So give me some thoughts on this split.
I mean, that split to me was incredibly good. Actually, I have a funny story of like how the team was built. So, Cold was mostly because, I mean, he was good, but he was Danish. But that was kind of like a team of renegades.
Oh, like the official just picked him or something, right?
I mean, no, I thought he was good too, according to what was it. But like the people. I remember, like, at the end of the split, people were like, a lot of them, yeah, you guys had a good roster. And so that was a team of renegades. Like, there was an Alphari that ended 6th place with Misfits, and Cole that didn't make it to playoffs.
Oh, no, it was a great job by Deficio,
Deficio did really good.
And I know he didn't have an enormous salary, like you say. Like, on this one, he had, like, budget that was, like, lower down.
No, it was really low budget. Then we got Patrik that ended up 10th place off, like, 216 of H2K or something. And then Mithy, the negotiation was... I think TSM asked us for like 1 million for Sven and Mithy. They're like, we only want Mithy. They're like, okay, 300k. Like, what about 0? It was something like that, because TSM didn't know that it was already public from Jacob Wolf that they signed a different support. So
right.
So it wasn't like that big of an incentive.
Right.
And I think that then the buyout was like 30k, and
which is a bargain for Mithy.
And Mithy took like some of that buyout from his salary.
Oh wow,
something like that. And then he asked for a bike. It was like he was just okay, guys, sure, take like 10k from my salary, but at least you have to give me a bike. And that to me showed like Mithy comes with hunger to compete. You know, and Mithy. Like, it was a team with Mithy and Nukeduck together, you know.
Perfect.
I acquired so much knowledge on the team, and the first split went really, 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 really well. We made it to finals. We eliminated FNATIC kind of comfortably, but I think that we ran out of juice. And once, like, I had no idea how to prepare against that G2.
I mean, I think they even admitted years later that one of those drafts was like thought up a minute before, so it meant, you know what I mean? Like, you couldn't have prepared, right?
Five people were playing Pike.
Yeah, exactly.
And then Discassio could go bot, mid, but I guess top as well. Like, every champion,
probably the hardest draft of all time, right?
Yeah, every champion in the game that could be played mid, they could play bot and top. But then I had to be careful about funneling, which was also in the game, and I had to be careful about Sonatarek. So like, we tried to like just pick some comps that were comfortable for us, but it was just that G2 was just on a whole different level.
Yes.
I think even in scrims, like, we were winning every scrim, but then we would get to G2, and if we would get the map, was like, hey, good job, guys.
Right.
But that's went really well.
Yeah,
still.
That draft was basically nightmare mode for a coach. It's like, as we say in English, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Like, whatever you ban, they're going to have something else, and then that's going to go somewhere. Yeah. It's impossible, isn't it? You can't do it. Like, I mean, if people don't know, I'll give the best example ever. It's not even just you. Dude, if you ever watch MSI, they did that to fucking T1. T1 didn't know they were going to swap stuff around. Like, no one could. No one could stop them, basically, right?
Then it was the Yasuo. And at MSI, I think, was mostly like the Yasuo that could go on all 3 roles. And I mean, that team was crazy. It was crazy.
Let me ask about some of these players. So you brought up Mithy. That's one thing I want to ask about, because one thing that's interesting is, it's funny because in some ways he's also on his own amazing arc. If you think of what I said about amazing in the jungle, he used to actually be a mechanics player too. He was a Thresh god. And then this was the era though when everyone thought he had no hands or the ints, but he's obviously an amazing brain for the game. But I noticed an interesting detail, because I've actually known Mithy quite a long time, that he always stresses though, is he doesn't like it if I call him like a captain or a shot caller, because because he says, no, but in the game I didn't shot call though. Like that was like Nukeduck or whatever. But I mean more in the sense of like the guy who's the brain of the team, because I've heard he is like the god in fucking reviews, mate. I've heard it from like Perks, like the best players tell me this guy, like if he speaks in the review, it's probably going to be something amazing. He's going to see so much of the game, right? I
think both him and Nukeduck are similar in that sense. It's like even in game they are not perma talking, but when they talk you better listen. You know, it's just when they talk it's correct. Like, and I think Nukeduck at that time, I mean, I wouldn't say that he would talk more than Mithy or that he would shot call more than Mithy. We just had a good flow of the game that would require less communication. I think Cold was also like a good brain for the early game. So we were a very cerebral team, not that as mechanic. I think that now that team wouldn't succeed, not even close to it, because I think that cerebral teams are kind of over. And like the mechanical ability to play fights and to create opportunities out of thin air is much more important in today's leagues than it was before. But even if he doesn't like it, Thorin, he was a captain, he was a leader, he'll always be. But actually,
well, that's an interesting thing, right? He has a weird aspect to his personality, though, Guilhoto. Yeah. It's funny because I've heard if he's like talking to an opponent or about them, he always says they're trash and makes him sound like he's arrogant. But then he's also really like self-effacing. Like he sort of downplays himself a lot, doesn't he?
No, he is. He's very critical with himself, but he's also very critical with others. Very, very critical with others. That was kind of like one of our demises in Summer Split. It was like the situation between him and Cold, I guess, got like tough to the point that Cold had to take a break because he couldn't play anymore. And a lot of it came with like the feedback between him and Mithy,
right?
I would say. And once again, I take that upon me because like I don't think I defended Cold enough in that regard, and I don't think I made Mithy feel like I was giving that type of feedback to Cold enough to the point that he had to do it.
Right.
So it's like that's something that you'll always see from him is like if a situation happened in the team that kind of like broke a bit the team that was done by the players, the fault is still mine because I'm the coach. I need to control those situations, right? But overall, like Mithy is probably one of my better friends from teams right now. I mean, not only because also of the Spanish, but I think he respected me a lot more. With Mithy, I remember that once the split ended and he got the FNATIC offer coach, I remember him telling me that coaching must be so easy and so relaxing because like you just go say some stuff on reviews, then you go back home and you don't have to play solo queue. You can just play WoW all day and it's fine. And I remember that once we met again in America, it was like, yeah, I couldn't be more wrong. This shit's like, it's so emotionally taxing.
You have to live the game, like, right? Yeah.
It's like, it's not even about the game. It's just, this guy has this problem and then that guy has that problem with the other guy and you have to solve it. And then you have to search for this, like more than the game itself. It's just so emotionally taxing. And I remember that that was like one of the moments that I felt that Mithy was like, okay, now you understand a bit that like it's not as easy as you thought, but with a brain like his, I think he's always going to be a great addition for any coaching staff, and he's looking for a job. So if you're hiring, just like this guy is obviously good for you to hire.
Yeah. I mean, all I'll say is this. Look, I think in Cloud9, yeah, he maybe didn't win as much as they wanted at the end, but he was in like 1 billion finals. He did win a bunch of titles. Yeah. He went to Worlds all the times. Like, yeah, it's obviously good. What about the obvious person also to ask about is in the bot lane, you had Patrik. Now, This is a player where it's interesting because obviously this is basically the team where he built his reputation, but he had the same reputation his whole career until the last couple of years, Guilhoto. It always went like this. If you ask someone who were the best ADCs, they're always going to go with the bigger names. They're going to go Reckless, like you say, Hansama. They're going to go Upset, obviously. These are the really big names that they always go straight to. And then after that, though, they always go Patrik. So he's always usually like in 4th or 5th in the league. And so the idea is he's an upper half ADC, but no one ever put him at the same status, right? Mm-hmm. Do you think that is was that wrong in your team? Was he actually like a better player than that? Was he one of the true carries? What did you think of him?
I think in my team probably, but I felt like the reason why, and I called for the swap between like Patrik and Upset, because I felt that when we were matching certain AD carries, we would miss firepower, and that Upset had more than Patrik. I think that the year after, though, I'm not sure if he kept on the upper bracket because people like Karzi started coming and did a big impact. But he's for sure a really good AD carry. But I don't know, like I feel like something misses to be an AD carry that you have to contest titles, you know? He's always going to be good. I think he's always going to be better than some of these bottom tier AD carries, but I don't know. He like there's something that I have that I miss from him. I don't know if it makes sense or not, but
put it this way, I know what you mean. It's like how in football, right? You can have a guy who's got 20 goals as a striker, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's like the magician guy who's going to do something epic in the big game. And he might just be a really good player, but in that moment, it's like you said about Upset. You want the guy who has like something extra, right? The it factor.
Yeah. I mean, that was kind of the idea. Just felt that like with Patrik, it would be someone that we would always get a good result with, but maybe not fulfill the ambitions that I had. And like, I don't know if I made the right decision or not, but I made that decision, so I lived with it. No?
In this summer split, as you say, obviously things deteriorated. Even though you had this awesome spring where you were ahead of FNATIC, you were contesting G2. In the summer, if people don't know, this team spent almost every week in 5th place, right? Which is playoffs. And at the end, you just lost all the last 2 games. And the worst thing is, when you failed, this is the thing people forget. There were 4 teams went 7-11 that split. So 2 of them got to go to the playoffs and 2 didn't. And you just didn't. So that's to also be like the worst way to fail. And then the worst thing is, because of that, at that point in time, then like, everything just collapsed because then Cold went out the lineup and then you don't get to go through regionals. It's like suddenly what happened in spring, everyone would say this team's going to Worlds. And then suddenly after this last week of summer, it just all fell apart completely.
Yeah, it was just mentally. Mentally, the team broke up. Especially Koldo, he couldn't really play anymore. Like legit, he would get vomits from touching League of Legends. Like and then we didn't make playoffs, and to Gauntlet we had to try to go to Zanzara, and we lost to Splice, which was a team that made it to Worlds to win in a 5th game with 2 weeks of practice. So of course we had the potential to go, but I don't know. It was just, I mean, that happened with Cold, and it is what it is.
How do you deal with that though? Because if you've just been in 2 finals and you know, you want to think like I want to be in the finals, I want to fucking win. Like to not even make the playoffs must be a blow, right?
I mean, it was insanely damaging, I would say. Especially once we failed the Gauntlet. And like, I mean, I guess that's what led to try to be as crazy as possible in the next year building roster. But it was very, very painful because I don't know, everything was going well. You know, and we were scaling up. I guess Rift Rivals also like caused us a bit of burnout, but I did feel like we were starting to play better towards the end, and then we failed that. And once we failed, I think like the mental damage was also even harder, and because of that, then Cold can't play, and when Cold can't play, like we have to play with a sub on Gauntlet, then we don't go to Worlds, and then it's even more damaging. And I was just lucky that I guess I had like a good support at home. Otherwise, it would be even worse, I guess.
Right, I have to ask a classic question. It used to be what everyone used to ask you on all the talk shows, but it's enough years people have forgotten now. Obviously, the thing people used to meme on back then, in the way years later there was that rogue time, everyone used to say, oh, OG just plays boring and they're just trying to scale and they just scale and never. Like, here's the thing, guys. Yes, obviously, like Nukeduck on certain picks would scale, but was that overblown? Was there a time when you were the scaling team?
Oh, we were. I mean, I wouldn't say. I think that people confuse scaling with what we would do. Like what we would do is we would try to suffocate enemies a lot. Like we wouldn't give fights and we wouldn't play for fights. We would play for picks and just a lot more 1-3-1 than what it's done now, and just try to drag opponents to one side and suffocate them, take all their camps, like make sure that they felt like it was really hard to get off their base once we get an early lead. And usually when you want to try to end the game through that way instead of through pure fighting, then you're going to take longer to end the game, and it's going to feel more boring because there are no kills. But it was our way to use our advantage, which was macro and brain power of our players. So we just used it, and like it's just gonna use. I mean, if you want to speak of a scaling team was Splice, and no one was calling them that. Then that team was scaling. That team was like having 45 average game time.
Yes. By the way, look, it's an obvious. I agree with you. If you have Alphari and Nukeduck, you'd almost be an idiot not to cycle in. Like, you've got the fucking best players to do it. But here's the question I have. It's an obviously loaded one, but I'll ask it anyway for the interview. If people don't know, you can sidle in a bit like with a champion, etc., but you can't do that 1-3-1 style that you used to do back then, because the game now is built around like these. I always say this, right? Even though this is a hot take, I think what they did to the game of League of Legends is they took like a really wide open strategical game and they made it like, you know, the concept like Fisher Price is that thing that makes little kids toys. It's like you make a kid's microphone. They made a little kids version of the game where it was like, there's like two buttons. They're called Dragon, which gives you a fucking buff. And then there's the Baron. And it's like any idiot knows, well, I'm in the lead. I should go and take the Baron now. Oh, I have the Baron pushing the base. Oh, we didn't get it. Right, go to the Dragon. It's like everyone understands this. It's the most obvious way to play the game. But it means that you can't, like you say, your team really could just avoid fights if you were smart, if you had the right champions. You could actually like outbrain a team completely, and essentially it'd be really hard for them to win. I'm guessing you miss this way of being able to play League of Legends.
I mean, yeah, because I had some of the best players to do it. So in that sense, I miss it. I mean, it's not that I miss this way to play. I just miss the option of this play.
Yes.
Of to play this way. Like it's just, I'm sure that like if in that time, if you wanted to play 2 lanes and deep in their jungle and just like pure fight and try to outplay mechanically, you could do it in that time period as well. But I think that now you're just like forced to do it.
Yes.
So I missed having the option. Like the game, even for me, I still like a bit more. I mean, actually, I don't know which way I like more. I actually don't know. Because now it's like so entertaining. It's so many fights, so many picks. So it's entertaining, but I guess it's more stressful for me because like it's every time that you go into a skirmish or a fight, you always have the chance of losing it.
Yeah.
So I think it makes it that you have to have more focus on early game, like because now getting the lead is much more important, and that part there can still be structure around it. So it's just putting a bit more focus on the early game, while before like there was strategy implications throughout almost the whole game. And right, just keeps cutting strategies, right? Like lane swap, we have to delete that shit. Banner of the command, we have to delete that shit. Everything that is not about fights is toxic for the game according to Riot, so I think they'll just and in a way it's kind of like good for the game, right? Because like we need to draw the kids back to playing, otherwise our rookies will have 27 years.
Sure. What about, obviously, as well as just that at Spring, you guys got to scrim against G2 the whole year, and that was the year when G2 was obviously insane and could have won everything. Right, give me some thoughts on this team, because I've heard Guilhoto, there are people who tell me that it's not even a joke. Like, they did sometimes feel unbeatable for, like, with the stuff they could do in the mid-game.
They wouldn't. They were unbeatable. Like, they were the only team that I felt that sometimes they would just laugh at us during scrims. Like, right. They were just, like, they were 4-0ing after they went, like, down 10k gold in one game and came back 5v5ing. It was not even like that's the crazy part. A lot of the times it wasn't even through macro. It was just they were 10k gold and they would 5v5, but then they would understand team fights so well, especially like Wunder and Caps, like with the way that they were flanking and finding picks and one-shotting the AD carry before the fight even starts and stuff like this, that they would come back and then on last game they would just lock in Shyvana top just because
just
and win.
Yeah.
Like there was a meme like the 5-game Shyvana top, and if G2 was 4-0 they would pick it. It was crazy. Like and I always told them like they were not. That was the best part, in my opinion, about G2. They weren't even scared of telling you how they would see the game, because they genuinely wanted us to improve so they could improve more.
Right.
Like, it was the only team that legit, like, I would talk to Grabs and we would just like, what do you think about this? Or how do you guys see the game this way? And he would tell me without fear of us being able to like beat them. That's even more disgusting, like the level of confidence that he can tell me how they are so ahead of the game that like, even if I catch up, they'll be even more ahead. Like, it's crazy, It's, yeah.
Right, obviously a player in this team I want to ask about is Alphari, because he's another player where, like I said, the fan who only looks at trophies is going to think this guy sucks. And I've always been someone who's had to like defend him on a million shows, because here's the thing, Guilhoto. Look, as someone who was a fan of Froggen, unsurprisingly, I appreciate people who are really good at laning. And I've always said, one thing I hate about fans is when they do that line where they just go like, either they say, because there's all team fight, they either go, lane doesn't really matter, which is like, what are you talking about? Yeah. Or they say anyone can lane. And both those sentences could not be less true. I mean, spoiler, if you watch the game now, guys, and watch how Chovy lanes, almost no one could do that. Like, that's actually the thing that makes him so insane to me. Is like, it's almost perfect how he lanes. Like, because the thing that's so insane with Alphari, what I remember was as well, he actually would have times when he didn't have any jungle attention top, and he sometimes would even have like the slightly worse matchup. But then he'd just come out of lane and play like 20 CS, and you're like, how did he do it? I'll have to go back and review this VOD. Like, I wish back then we had the pro view, mate. I bet this guy was painting masterpieces. What did you think of that aspect? He was kind of like incredible in lane, right?
No, in lane there was no one like him. But I think that a lot of his practice was also laning phase.
Right.
Like he would lane, he would play like some 1v1s, and he would find ways to win matchups that are kind of impossible, and he would find ways to win it. I remember he was doing some 1v1s as GP versus Lucian, and he would win the matchup level 1 because he found out that if he stacks his passive, or if he saves his passive and is not hitting and hides on the second bush, and he just like ignores CS and queues the Lucian on cooldown. This at that time, right? It doesn't work anymore. With corrupting potion and go back on the bush. At some point, if he would see that the Lucian would start Q or W, he could just flash with the passive and he would have 0 CS, but he would kill him. Or like he would put him low to a point where now he could farm and get push, even if he lost some CS. And like that attention of detail to lane, to me, was very impressive. But I think that he for sure lost the love of the game. He got burned out. He got like focused on a lot of things. I think he made a body transformation that was incredible and insane, and he got like also very addicted to it, and it was really good for his health. But he reached to a point, I think in the second year of Origen, that he was playing 5 solo queues a week, something like this.
Oh, wow, right.
And like I think he just like was also demotivated with how the team was going, or his relationship with Upset. But he would still be so insane in lane that he would tell exactly how the first 5 minutes of his lane would go. And it would always go how he was saying. This to me is the most important thing. It's like a lot of times I hear that like top laners or bot laners, when they are describing their lane, yeah, I think push here depends on trades. If I trade good, I can get push. If not, then maybe he can get it. And then on the bounce, maybe I can crash. And Alphari was just like, I'm gonna crash third wave. Then there's gonna be a bounce. He can't crash that wave. If you're here at 4 minutes 30, we can force his flash. I'll base and TP after, and then build a slow push. And after that, we can dive. But what the fuck? And he would go just like this, and then it was just up to jungler, like you want to follow this or not, but he will go like this no matter what. It was so crazy.
And then what about, look, this is again where the people used to go, and then he'd shit outside the lane. It's like, why do you put the word shit there? He just wasn't the best team fighter in the world, but he wasn't bad, right? So give me some thoughts. What was his issue when it came to the team fights?
His issue, I think, more than team fights, it was when to move.
Ah, right.
Like on a timer, or he would always get that big lead, but on a time where like it was more important Drakes, I think he was still a bit stuck on the 1-3-1, and like we can just trade this Drake for me to get pushed up and get a bit more CS lead. But I think that at that time the game was already changing. This second year of Origen, and he would usually push an extra wave instead of moving, and stuff like this. That then would make it that it's not that he was bad on team fights; he was just not on team fights.
Right.
Usually, but I think it was just like not keeping up with the transition. And in my opinion, everything is connected, right? Like the game started to change. They put more importance on dragons, so now top laners moving to dragons instead of playing for snowball their own lead is more important, and it's also adjacent to the time that he started playing less solo queue. So I think that all of that together gave that impression. But yeah, it was like he was still getting a lot of his advantages in lane. He was just not able to lose it because the enemy top laner had more incentive to just not lane after a certain time.
Right, if I ask you about Xerxe, the jungler, I have an angle on this one, which is a bit like I said about Vizicachi. This guy's another guy where my interview with him blew my mind, but in the other way, which is, right, basically, because he had that meme from when he was in Splice that everyone was like, all you're doing is just farming, you're just fucking farming, you're not doing anything. Right, basically, he just denies at all that that's how he ever plays. He claims he isn't the clear jungler and the guy who just farms up. And because I used to say, he did a good job at it, though. It's like he could still cover when he needed to on a gank, you know. Then he obviously if you farm, you'll come to the team fight strong, you can win. But in his mind, he wanted to believe that he was a guy who could do anything. He could early gank, he could do the early pressure. What can you either give me a tip? Do you disagree with that? Why do you think he would think that? What do you think of this guy? It seems strange.
Xerxe is right now on my team. And we finally, after 4 teams together, we finally won a trophy. And I think that about that is like, I think he has periods. Like, I think he does have periods where he only clears or he only looks to clear. And he had periods where, for example, his Kiana was like level 3 ganking every game. Right, and it was like a lot of times how he thinks the most optimal way is to play the champion, and sometimes the best champions he had were the champions that played that way the best. So, for example, when we were playing Ornn Karthus, right, I don't want them to not farm with Karthus. Right,
sure.
That's exactly what I want them to do. Like, I just want them to farm with Karthus. But then he wasn't as good on Jarvan. And it wasn't as good on Jarvan, so then we couldn't do the ganks level 2. But for example, now he's playing Sejuani and sometimes he ganks level 3. And he's good with it. And with Maokai, he kind of does the same. But if he's playing Maokai into a Zyra now, then he doesn't want to do it, because if he does it and loses a quadrant, then Zyra, that he's super fast on farming, then I think he's like, the reason why sometimes he tends a lot into that farming or gives that impression to people, it's because he assumes the enemy jungler is going to do the right thing and that he's going to be behind, and he's just like very like scared of being behind, I would say. More than like being on the perma farm, he's scared of being behind. So when he has a jungler that has to perma farm, he will do it. And when enemy team is playing a jungler that has to perma farm, he'll be more careful on the timers that he has.
What about, as you say, you had Kays in this team as the analyst, and even though obviously, as you referenced, he's someone else who like the drama sort of like clouds what people think about this guy. But if they don't know, in Origin, I heard really good things from a bunch of the players, by the way, even years later. Obviously, when he was in FNATIC, like they were in the fucking World's Finals. Then later he was in Team Liquid when they went to MSI final. Like, all I'll say is like that, there can't be a coincidence. Like, he doesn't just walk around and like, wow, it's another team. So, I'm not doing anything. He has to have, and I've heard something about, they say it's about like his strength is like the presentations or something, like the way he sort of like shows info to players. Give me some thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think he was the pioneer of analysts in the scene. Before, a lot of analysts were like coaches that couldn't be coaches, so they just like, oh, I can just be an analyst. I can just like see how the enemy team plays and do a report. But this was the first guy that was like supporting with data, like delta of red buff, like how long did they take between the camp spawn and until they take, how many dragons before all of the, and now it's like way more developed now, right? Like everyone now has access to grid and like found ways to get the API data from Riot and is able to build good stats. But before there were very little, and there was only one that not only could do that, but he could also present you in a way that was like appealing. That because League of Legends players are like, even the ones that are a bit older, they are all kind of zoomers, you know. If it's not images, if it's a lot of text, I'm not going to read that, you know. But he just found a way to make the information very easy to digest, and he was very good at gathering information. So for me, he was like the pioneer of analysts in League of Legends.
Explain this to me. How is it that a guy is in the final with OG, and then the next year, like you said, he came third in the first split? Yeah, there's some not great other splits aside from that. How is it that after that you go to America and you're on Immortals, which wasn't really that great a team actually? Like, why weren't you getting like a gig for FNATIC or some big team?
I did get the offer from FNATIC.
You did? Okay. Why didn't you take it then?
Because they were taking too long.
Okay.
Like they were like wanting to wait for Worlds and stuff, and Immortals was putting me a deadline. And to me, the appealing part of Immortals was that I was gonna have full control of everything. I could build my own project again, and I came, like, it's so hard for people to understand this, but I came from an insanely stressful year. And I came from an off season with Origen where like all my players had to do complaints to Riots because of the ways that some stuff were being handled. So like my head was like so stressful that I wanted to feel like I could exceed expectations again, you know, that I could be good without being because of the players that I had. Hindsight now, it's not like this makes much sense, but this was the way that I thought that I would be the happiest, is if I can like see success through something else than winning. And on that 1 year, I kind of needed that, and I think I did a really good job at Immortals. I still feel like that way. I honestly thought that we could make it to Worlds, Thorin. It's hard to see it, but we were stomping every single team at the end, like Cloud, except TL, but Cloud9, TSM, all of them, we were like 4-1, 5-0, 6-0. With
something just happened on the stage games.
I mean, no, I think like something happened on the last week. I think that how to explain this? We won the first series on playoffs against Dignitas at 3-0. Very easily, and I think that some players were happy with where we got. So then our intensity and the effort that we were putting went much lower. So then on the next series, we could see the results of it, and we lost 3-1 to TSM. But I think if we had more ambition, we probably would have made it to Worlds. I remember even Blabber saying that. Like, as everyone was like, yeah, TSM favors 3-0 and stuff, and Blabber was like, guys, on an interview after the series, guys, I don't know, to me, Immortals is favorite, because we were just coming from, like, making them FF at 10 minutes sometimes in scrims. We were playing insanely well, but it was just not meant to be.
Is it fair to imagine that you must have gotten paid fucking pretty well to be in Immortals?
I was... both in Immortals and TL, I think I was like the 7th or 8th best paid coach in NA.
Okay.
So it wasn't bad. I'm not complaining.
You're not a demanding person. You're just willing to accept it.
Yeah.
I know some people would say like, I want the big bag. I want the fucking millions.
Yeah, I don't know if the big bag was there. Like, I'm not sure. I as I told you, like, I did it more to like. I thought that was the project that I would feel most real, like realized. It's not realized. It's that I would feel more like achieved.
Yeah,
that I would achieve something. So, and I like that year. That year was good actually.
The funny thing is, in that team, there are two names which will be a lot better known now because later on they sort of proved themselves. It's actually the solo laners. So you had Revenge as the top laner, who, by the way, it's actually, even though I know he always could leave and he always had all that, you could go be a doctor and all that bullshit, right? Yeah. The problem was, like, he clearly was a good player. He just somehow ended up on a bunch of teams that didn't do much. And then Insanity, if people see him now, even though Shopify Rebellion isn't a fucking good team, he's actually a quite interesting player, mate. He's so creative. His picks are fucking... I actually enjoy watching him play, and I'm not a big fan of LCS, mate. So give me some thoughts on these two guys.
So Revenge was actually 9th place in Academy when I picked him up. And he was someone that... It was one of the players that I took under my wing the most. I really wanted to develop them. And like I think we achieved a lot together in terms of his growth, and then he managed to go to EG, where I think he had a really good year, and he was kind of robbed of an all-pro team.
Yep.
And then he quit because EG, I don't know what happened.
They had no money or whatever, some shit like that.
EG, but like they disappeared, I guess. And Insanity was just like the same player as before. This was always his strength, and it's like it can be a double-edged sword. But from a team like Shopify Rebellion that's kind of like lower in the standings, that for us that were also at the start considered to be lowering the standings, that's the kind of players that you need. Just
how you win BO1s.
It's like just cheese the shit out of the other teams, just get like a guy that plays everything, and you'll get wins like that, like every region.
By the way, one thing I do want to ask, because this just seems weird, mate, is how the fuck did you have Dardoch as a coach? Because obviously, famously, he's probably the person who's considered like the worst team atmosphere guy ever. So how did you have him as a coach? What was that? I
got a loan again because like my assistant coach was fired again. You
have bad luck with coaches tweeting shit. Yeah. I know you just got some bad luck.
In my defense, after that, none of them was fired.
All right, okay.
But yeah, he was fired again, and then I needed an assistant coach. And I always thought that what would complement me the most, usually it's an assistant coach that was a pro player. Just because like I don't have that point of view, and I think it helps me a lot. Kind of understand a bit the point of view of a pro player, and having someone that can help a bit more on the individual side. And I wanted to divide the workload, so Dardoch was available, and we talked. Like he was just kicked from Dignitas, I guess, from like doing some. I don't even know what he did. Probably some dumb shit.
Sure.
But I don't even know what he did. And I took him, and to be fair, like he did good. I told him like, okay, I want to divide workload. I want you to focus on early game. You were a jungler. I think that you have good knowledge about early game. You're always like very good when it came to cheese and find some good advantages early game. So like we divided that way, where he would be a bit responsible for our early game, and I think it worked. It worked quite well. Zero problems. Like didn't have a single problem with Dardoch. Not once. There was never like any type of episode, and he argued with players. It's like it's part of your job as a coach, and it was never something out of the normal. I think he worked well as well because our team culture was very European. Was very like I will flame the shit out of you myself.
Yeah.
Like players were used that like I will go to your face and like you are fucking shit. I remember going to Revenge after he did. I mean, it happened multiple times, but I remember going to Revenge after he dove Finn. I think he on an official game he dove Finn 1v1 and died when the game was won, and then the sign was like so fucking tanky that we couldn't win the game or something. And I remember like the amount of stuff that I said to Revenge. It was like so insane. I remember one time as well. Actually, this was the first time that the culture was set. That we just, I remember I told them at the start of the day, this is how I want the level, like this is how I want when we are on loading screen to go. Talk about lane setup, Drago, you make the plan, and then talk about level 1. And I remember leaving there, and like, guys, they have Rel, be careful, or they have Rakan, one of the two. Be careful, they can jump under the pit, make sure that we cover this way on level 1. And then they're just talking about some dumb shit, some really dumb stuff. I don't even know, like just players, like just talking about like stuff outside of the game. and we get cheesed by the Rakan. So they come into the review and I'm yelling at everyone, you know, and it's one of those moments that is like, I'm yelling and you are quiet. And Destiny, that came a bit late, like that arrived like 10 seconds later, so he lost a bit of the context, was like trying to say that this is not his fault. So I yelled so fucking high to shut the fuck up. And then he shut up, and like the Americans were like, what the fuck's going on?
Of course.
That he's benched. It's like he's out and stuff like this. And after that review, they see me and Destiny just talking like nothing happened. You know? And after that, I explained to them, it's like, we are here to compete. Like, we are not here to like be nice to each other. If there is something that you guys did, like if I have to raise my voice, I will raise my voice. But this is not like, but I won't hold grudges, you know? Okay. It's like, this is not how I do it. Like, it just, the environment has always have to be that you can be frontal, truthful, and not like hold back with your teammates. And like, you have to know how to receive the criticism as well. So I think we had a culture where it was really, at some point, especially when Dardoch, or even before Dardoch joined, that it was like very easy to give and receive criticism. So then I think that someone of the profile of Dardoch like had no issues as well integrating. But I do remember the Americans telling me that they were never really used to something like that, but they liked. But it did give me the vibe that, like, at that point at least, America was really, really soft.
Yes,
like everyone was like walk on eggshells and stuff. And if you're fucking up, I'll tell you that you're fucking up. And
along those lines, go on.
And like sometimes I expect my players to do that as well. You know, if I fucked up a draft, tell me that I fucked up a draft, so that I don't fuck it up again. Don't try to like sugarcoat it. You know, it's a waste of time.
Along these lines, let me ask you this question. So even though the funny thing is, if people think of me in fans, I mean, I've been around so long, like, the joke is I've got a list of like 10 countries I can't go to, mate. I'm like a terrorist at this point in time, you know what I mean? Like, the fans will all kill me there if I arrive and they see me. Is that you, Thorin? And then chase me on the street. So, not really, but there are a couple I definitely won't go to, right? But people are going to think I mainly mean Brazilians, right, Guilhoto? But what they don't know is there was actually like an old school CS player who's from Portugal, so then all the Portuguese fans hated me for 5 years. As people see now, if you flame Mad Lions in the LEC, you know what your fucking Twitter timeline's going to be like. Now, look, I'm built for that, mate. I can handle it. That's my world. But a lot of people can't, right? So what I would ask is this. You are definitely a Portuguese guy in that sense. You have the hot blood, right? You're not the guy, look, you're quite calm now when you're just articulating it. But as you say, if someone fucks up and if they argue, and even worse, that's one thing that's underrated, right? A lot of fans don't know how annoying pros are in VOD reviews for, like, it's not even that like they're necessarily really saying you're wrong. They just keep defending that they made the mistake though. Like, I didn't mean it though. They're really hard. Essentially, arguments are very easy to happen, I imagine.
Yeah, my problem is excuses. Excuses is like,
yes,
because I don't need to know your thought. Like, but revenge it was a lot like this, where like I even started using an expression that he doesn't speak Spanish, right? But like sometimes he would be like, bzz, and I would just say mucho texto, like mucho, which means like that's a lot of text. Like, like shut up, like, because I'll tell him here. I would just tell him, okay, here you have to crash this wave. Just to give an example, it's like, yeah, but I didn't crash this wave because I thought that the enemy jungler would be bot, but the enemy support maybe this, that. What the fuck? Who? What? I just crash the wave. And he would give so many excuses, and that one is like annoying. But the most annoying ones is when it's a mistake that you talk 4 or 5 times and then you keep doing it, just like lack of attention.
Everyone needs a support network, and mine is, of course, my Patreon community, the Scrolmanati, who in many ways, they're the Sonny to my Xerxe, saying, I got you, babe. So this video and all the others on my channel were kindly supported by the following names: Ahmed Hadju, Mac Pugnaccio Rakula, Adam Tomlin, Animosity, Jensen Go, Tosh, Toucan, and you know it. Xerxe's minion, my main man, always going to be referenced, one of the best patrons of all time. Would you like to ask a question in my AMA? Maybe you want to suggest a topic or a guest to say on my channel? Do you want teasers, find out who the upcoming Reflections and Talk to Thorin interviews are? Maybe you want to do one of those long discussions where you get to set the topics we talk about. Well, if any of these or others appeal to you, put your money where your mouth is. Join the Scrolmanati today via the Patreon link in the description box below.